Okay, we're live now. So let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You want to read the land acknowledgements, Hannah? I can do it if you're on the phone.
It's a way of respecting, honoring, and creating awareness about our past. We begin our village board meetings by acknowledging that New Paltz is on the ancestral land of the Munsee, Esopus, and Lenape people. Please join us in finding ways to support Indigenous communities. You can see the suggested links that we have on our agenda and our minutes. And please feel free to share with others and also help us expand the list. Sorry, my mouth's not working.
In terms of the business agenda, I have a couple of things I need to add. For item number 8, I'm going to add a sewer project. For item number 9, we're adding an application that the Margaret Wade Lewis Center will be applying for. And item number 10, the clerk treasurer's office would like to hire a part-time temporary account clerk. I move to accept the business agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So 3 of us. I would also move to accept the consent agenda, or to move the consent agenda. I move the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Announcements. We've been doing this lately, trying to keep as many people as possible in the loop regarding the various public hearings. So at the planning board, there's a project at 29 South Chestnut. It is going by the name of Bonteque Brewing Company. So there's going to be a public hearing regarding that proposed plan, which is before our planning board. And then there is also a project regarding the property at 16 and 18 Mulberry Street. It's the merging of 2 parcels and changing the house that's there from a 2-family to a 1-family. And on Thursday here in this room at 5:30, we're going to host our second conversation with the folks from Ulster County about the plans for the Veterans Cemetery and lighting the U.S. flag. We're going to be joined by Dennis Doyle and Mark Casapoli from Ulster County Veterans Services. And is Eve going to join us tonight? Oh, is she busy with?
She's still in.
She's in another meeting, so we might hear from Eve later. I wanted to also take this time just to share publicly. There was a van on Main Street selling cannabis products, or allegedly selling cannabis products. There's also been some reports regarding shops that may or may not be selling cannabis related items, but we just wanted to share publicly that this is a moving target. There's ongoing guidelines that are coming out of New York State. So we've been in regular contact with New York State's Office of Cannabis Management. We've been on calls where we brainstorm with our police chief as well as our local code enforcement official. But we just wanted to share publicly that we're very aware of everything that goes on, just because we see it when we walk down the sidewalk, and then each of our board members are probably contacted via social media or just private text. So these are all conversations and concerns that we're very aware of, and we're doing our best to figure out what are the next steps. But we've been informed by the State Office of Cannabis Management that there will be new guidelines and laws related to how a lot of that works in the coming weeks. Do you have any announcements, Michelle or Stana?
Thanks, Tim. I have my announcement about Family of New Paltz, always seeking donations. Right now, financial donations are especially helpful, and you can go in and make cash donation of any amount, $10, $20 or more, and give it to one of the folks that work there. And they in turn use those funds to help folks pay bills that are outstanding, or keep the heat on, or help different people in different ways in our community. So money is very needed. They also have various other things that are needed, usually in season clothes only. But if you wanted to donate items, I would suggest calling first and making sure what you have is needed there, to save yourself a trip and see if maybe you have some of those things, because family is limited on space for holding things for long amounts of time. But they've, really been, they're such an amazing organization to help people in our community. And a lot of their things, they also help younger folks in our community. They work with New Paltz youth program as well, to supply different things over there that some younger folks might need. So keep family in your giving list.
I wish I had all of Alex's usual things to share. I will at least share that the free food fridge is here right outside of the Village Hall at 25 Plattekill Avenue. And it's open 24/7. And we love it when more people come to help feed their neighbors. And when people need to eat, come on and grab some food.
And we have a public hearing scheduled for this evening. I'm going to wait until Bill or Alex visit us in person before going ahead with that public hearing. And so then moving into the consent agenda. So the director of the library was going to visit with us tonight and share results from their annual report. Jillian Murphy is actually going to see us on March 8th at that meeting because of the snow. But we do have Anton Stewart from New Paltz Public Access TV. Anton, why don't you come up just so we can grab your conversation?
Where do you want me here?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, Mayor Rogers, members of the board, or member of the board, thank you for having us. So we are in the process of, or about to begin the process of renegotiating the franchise TV agreement, which is at the moment through Charter Spectrum. The village didn't actually sign the last proposed renewal, so they're operating, you guys are operating without a franchise right now, but under the terms of how the franchise agreement was prior to that one. And the town's franchise agreement expires, I believe, at the end of March. There's some things that really need addressing in it, which I'm more than welcome to go through with you. I believe you guys have all got copies of this. The PATV committees worked on the existing town franchise agreement and added some things that would benefit our community, and have been asked to incorporate certain things via both the village and the town boards, specifically in terms of looking after members of our community to improve the services they get. There's a lot of, I guess, trying to think of the best word to describe this. There's a feeling, shall we say, which is palpable about Spectrum, that a lot of people feel that they're caught in a non-competitive environment where the price keeps going up and they keep getting less.
Yeah.
And the cable company don't honor the sort of things that they say they're supposed to, specifically for our seniors. For example, they're supposed to get 1 month of cable service free. And that includes all of the services, whatever they're getting. That's supposed to include internet, whatever's on their bill. If they paid their bill promptly for 12 months, they get a month free. It's so hard for anybody to claim that now. So we've tried to, really sort of hammer that home in the revised agreement. And the other things that we've put in, I mean, there's not that many changes, frankly. We've put in that Spectrum really need to compensate people for protracted service outages if it's not the subscriber's own fault. I mean, if the subscribers damage their own equipment or pulled the cable out or whatever, then, you can't really hold the company responsible for that. But there's been no attempt, when the service has been down repeatedly or for a long protracted period of time. And some people have been without service for like a week or whatever. So really then they need to just automatically provide compensation. So that's one of those things. And the thing particularly for public access is, well, I don't know if you guys know, at the moment, we're using antiquated equipment provided by Spectrum to try and send our signal to their head end.
Mm-hmm.
And the stuff is so old that they probably have to pull people out of retirement to come and fix it now. It's at least a 30-year-old modulator. They're not made anymore. They don't make parts for them anymore. If it breaks down, which it has, again, now, they've already replaced it 2 times. We're currently off air, and we're trying to get Spectrum to at least give us parity so that we can broadcast in HD. Our entire workflow is all HD now.
Mhm.
And we live stream the channel, mpztv.org. You can watch it live. At the moment, there's just a slide up there which is saying our service is down right now. But when programming's going on, you can actually watch it live online. But we've expanded it, particularly on the PATV side of things, to really ensure that we can transmit a good signal, and that they step up to the plate. I don't know. I mean, it's going to take me probably several hours to go through the nitty gritty of this. I don't know if you have that time, or if you've got specific questions, I can hone in straight at that.
Right, and we had a fairly detailed conversation when you shared the draft
Right.
a couple of months ago.
Right.
So we're on record, and you provided us with the highlights during that conversation. But Michelle, did you have a question? No?
No, not right now.
I did. I don't know if you have this off the top of your head, but you had pointed out how the town's franchise agreement recently expired or set to expire.
Set to expire at the end of March. Yeah.
And the village agreement expired many years ago.
I don't know when. That actually predates my time on PATV.
Predates. I think it's like north of a decade ago.
It may be.
Yeah.
It may well be. Yeah.
So what we're doing tonight is just, as a board, accepting this draft to
Open
share with
negotiations,
Spectrum and say, this is what we would like the updated franchise agreement for both the town and the village to look like. And the town board has already accepted that as the draft to share with Spectrum.
That is
So
correct.
now we would take that action tonight. That's what you're suggesting as.
Ideally, because I think we're in a much stronger negotiating position if both town and village speak with unity. So there's not the opportunity to play Peter against Paul here, kind of thing.
Yeah, makes tons of sense. So I'm going to move that we take this version and submit it to Charter and ask them to respond. Maybe you can second it, but then I'm not going to call the question until Alex or Bill come and visit with us this evening. So we have that teed up, and then we'll just do that tonight.
Okay. Is it anything else you need from me? Is there anything you want me to do?
No,
I think you did a great job, and I thank you for all your work.
Not at all.
We went through it, so, I mean,
Yeah.
It doesn't make interesting reading. I'm sorry.
no, it doesn't, but that's not your fault.
Yeah, no, I think it's an important document to share with them and say, this is what we want. This is what is important to our community and our local governments. And we think this is how we could, best use what they're supposed to provide us.
when we do get to a point of something like agreement, prior to anything being affected, it is necessary to have, under the PSC rules, to have a public meeting. So that would have to happen. I mean, I've cited it in here, but it's just
A public meeting where we discuss.
where people, the public hearing where people can, make issues or raise issues or whatever, that we're supposed to have done this whole consultative thing prior to actually, agreeing an agreement.
Okay,
So that needs to be tabled, but probably premature before we even get into the same ballpark.
Mhm.
okay, good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
And then next on this evening's agenda, Lalo Group presentation. Do you want to join us, sit at the table, just so we can pick up our full conversation? There's seats for everybody. You can sit on both sides.
Want to bring the.
No one would be able to hear if you weren't near this. That's the point. And the sound of your voices won't be picked up. If
Yeah,
you want to
just-
bring that
you
closer,
can-
by all means. Okay.
It won't
That
be
makes sense.
seen on the
It won't be seen
screen,
on the
so I guess wherever we can see it makes sense.
Put it over there, maybe everyone can see it.
Okay, perfect.
With a fun fact, I think I was on the original cable committee with New Paltz back when I first started. I lived in the town and represented
You were on the public access
the,
commission.
I probably negotiated that 30-year-old equipment back then.
Hope you're gonna get on the phone. Over there. You were. That's what we were trying to tell you. We wanted these people to see, we wanted everybody to, if they wanted to watch it when it's recorded.
Just have them if anybody.
Up, down, sort of, kind of. Okay.
The plans are also linked to the agenda.
I'll just quickly introduce your whole
Yes.
team,
Yeah.
names and affiliations.
I'm John Capello. I'm with J&G Law. And I'm here with Luis Martinez. Luis is the principal of the Lalo Group, the owners and developers. Jason Anderson. Jason is the architect. Jason's probably, after I give a brief intro, going to do the bulk of the presentation. And Justin Dates, who is the project engineer. And really what we're here tonight is back in December, we wrote a letter to give a brief, just very quick Reader's Digest version of the project. It started out around 2018 when we requested a zoning amendment at that point to allow the development of buildings that had, to increase the height of buildings and to provide a mix of residential, hotel, retail, and office. We then went and did charrettes and meetings with the neighbors over in community over the course of some time. And then based upon that, we came up with a project that was compliant with zoning, reduced the height significantly. That project was reviewed by your building inspector and consultation with the planning board and village attorneys to determine that it did comply with zoning as an interpretation of the zoning law. Then some concerns were raised as we were discussing to maybe reduce some of the office and the retail component and provide some additional housing units. During that time, the village also amended the zoning to make it actually a little more project friendly to be able to provide that appropriate mix. At the same time that we were discussing the zoning, it was discovered that there are restrictive covenants that show up on the title to the land, and we'll want to discuss those briefly tonight. I would preface it with there is a separate attorney for the Lalo Group who conducted the closing, who has opined on the legality of those covenants. I'm not going to go into that issue tonight. Really, what we want to go into the issue is the history of it, what was required, and how we believe the development as we've revised it to address some zoning and kind of recalculate it actually meets the spirit, if not the letter, of those covenants. So at the time of the, back in 1968, the village transferred a 0.92 acre parcel, which on that map would be the, Justin will point out, it's kind of a,
I can't read it.
yeah, it's,
Thank you.
looks like a rectangular with two little bump outs there. That's a 0.92 acre parcel that was transferred to a developer who at that point was also doing a proposed mixed use development just on that 0.92 acre parcel. In the letter I presented, we presented the, we don't have the actual site plans, but we have the some of the documentation regarding that development, which was developed on piers. So there was land underneath the actual buildings that would be provided for parking, and there was an enclosed walkway through the portion of the building. And that was done to address the covenants that the village put on in 1968, which were the requirement that the building be constructed not to exceed 15% of the square footage of the lot. So the way that project as designed and as was before the board when they adopted those covenants, as Justin will show, it was built on piers, so it wasn't on the ground and there was parking underneath, so that wasn't considered as coverage as it went against the 15%. Jason is going to show how we intend to handle that now. There is also a requirement that a pedestrian access not less than 15 feet wide, extending from Vanderlyn Avenue in a westerly directions to other lands of the village be provided. That development in 1968, that was before the board when they considered and imposed these covenants, was, it looks like it was enclosed and you would have to go through a door to access it. Jason will show how we address that. And then there was also requirement that not less than 50% of the remaining property be restricted to be developed as a parking lot with surface covering similar to the grade, and that the remainder be devoted to park purposes. Once again, that was addressed by the land that was underneath the building on the piers where the parking is provided. As Jason will explain, we're doing something similar here, but the parking will be in a underground parking garage. So, so those were the 1968 covenants. Now, I noticed in those covenants, there was also a requirement that the parking had to be provided within 2 years. That obviously wasn't met because the property is still undeveloped, and the village did rescind that portion of the restrictive covenant. And then there was a provision in there that provided the village the right to alter or modify those restrictions to make them less restrictive if it was deemed to benefit the village. In 1998, a additional property was deeded to that developer, and that is on the very bottom, a long rectangular piece that is attached to both of the properties was added to the property, and that contained two restrictions. That one required that parking that was existing on a portion of that premises be allowed to continue, along with, I think, a guide rail, which is on the very bottom of the page. You can see the actual spots. And then there was another provision that any drainage that was going onto that property, directed to that property from Hasbrook Park as it existed in 1988 had to continue to be accommodated. And then beyond 1988, the third parcel that is a 0.97 acre. I might get the 0.97 and the 0.92 confused, but a 0.97 acre, which is on the, as we're looking at on the left-hand side, was added to this project. And I know in my experience subsequent to that, I was before the village board with the developer who was developing this 2-acre combination at that point for an affordable housing project that for one reason or another did not move forward, which brings us to Luis and his group purchasing the property and goes back to my history of where we were with the zoning. So what I'm going to do now is, and as I understand that both the compliance with zoning of the new project is subject to an interpretation and review by the building inspector. As I said, the last time he did it, because the code is a law, and therefore, and there are rules and regulations and cases that determine how you interpret a law and what rules and standards are there. So we anticipate that the building inspector will be consulting with the attorneys to, to determine on the compliance, and same thing with the restrictive covenants. Those are legal documents, and compliance with them is also subject to long histories of case law that relates to that. Now, having said that, I understand the board is considering also bringing on a planner to provide some input on those, which is certainly your prerogative, and we believe having a planner as we go through the whole process of review certainly would help us identify the issues to address as we go through the development of the project and make sure it's reviewed and compliant, and meets the goals and objectives of your comprehensive plan, and meets the needs of the community. So with that, I'll give it over to Jason, who can present not just how we believe we meet the covenants, but also guide you through a massing study to show you the new development and new design and how we believe it's improved on the last iteration.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So maybe I'll hit on the covenants, because this, I think, we're trying to help describe it a little bit more and how this satisfies some of those, and really tries to meet the intent of it. But I'd like to maybe just give a real brief overview, just I know everybody's had the package. Essentially, what we've got, if you were to look at the entire package, is in this property, which now this is the entire property. We're connecting, of course, Hasbrook to Platico. Here's basically we're sitting right here or standing here at the moment. We've got the parking area. We've got Elting up to the west here. And essentially what we have are 3 structures that are 3 stories in height. We've got the hotel, restaurant, banquet facility. We have 16 apartments over the first floor of office space. And then we've got 2 floors of apartments, another 16 units, and that sits over some amenity space and some office. And all of this is now on 1 level of parking under the entire space. But because the grade comes up here, as we all know, there's a 2nd level of parking that is just under the hotel section. So sort of have stepped the buildings up. So, but from the outside, it essentially looks like 3 distinct components. So what you notice here with the colors, this is really to try to understand from 1968, the covenants, and then how can we try to meet those same covenants and what the village was looking for. So one of the covenants was a connection built running north-south. And so what we've done is we've got really basically a promenade that connects between, its narrowest point is 12 feet. The widest point is about 28 or 30 feet in this section. And essentially that's just open outdoor plantings, green space, public access that essentially takes you from the public municipal lot over to Hasbrook. And that really divides the spaces. And what's interesting is we're trying to step the buildings down. So even some of these apartments essentially come out onto that sidewalk, can walk, or anybody can walk in between. And it's right at grade from where the parking is. So that's the connection in the north-south direction. The green hatching that you see is to really connect in the east-west connection. So trying to accomplish that as well from, we've got this tremendous grade change on the property. So, essentially, again, here we are, you'd come from the sidewalk here, come along the building, a set of steps that bring you down now back to the level of the parking. You come along this same promenade that connects down another set of stairs, and now you've got a sidewalk that takes you out to Elting. So really trying to also get the east-west connection that was shown there. The other thing that's as part of John mentioned with the covenants is this area in yellow here. You can see the lines. This is actually the village parking that's on this property. So that's what you see in this sort of sliver that's there. And of course, the rest of this remains as green space. Something to note when it comes to the covenants in the whole 1968 till now, the property has changed. So if you were to look at this blue line, that was the original parcel, one of the original parcels back then. Our parcel, in actuality, right now, is this red line. So at some point that was subdivided off, now is someone else's parcel, and now that's, so our parcel actually is what you see that wraps would be in that direction. From the other interesting thing when it comes to what John was mentioning, we actually pulled up I'm going to show one real quick first. So this of course, sort of orients everybody, right? With the property, we're sitting right in this building here. This sort of outlines what I was just referring to. And this is just a massing study. It doesn't colors or anything like that. But what it basically shows is the existing parking that's here, that connection through crosses over a footbridge that goes over the stream that runs along Hasbrook. And it shows the three buildings. So this is our hotel section that we're proposing. These are the apartments over the office space. And then these are the other apartment buildings. So that sort of gives you a basis of what we're talking about. The reason I wanted to show this is John mentioned the proposal that supposedly had satisfied the covenants prior, right? And that was part of it where it sat up on piers. That was the way they addressed the grade change, which also addressed, I guess, the 15% coverage. So we found an image of that. So this was the project. Looks like Laura's of New Paltz. So we've got the hotel that went in that direction. This was a shopping center, indoor, and I believe this is the rest of the hotel as a thing. So what they did, it's interesting, is this is the municipal lot here. They created a bridge over, and the reason they had to create a bridge is they dropped, the grade is low here. They dropped it all the way across. So what they did is, you'll see, these are the piers, and this is all parking underneath. So they created two bridges that got over to this outdoor walkway that basically went around the outside of the building. And they created a railing that then prevented people from falling off at the municipal lot side into that property. Now it's a little bit different when you're out there because as the grades, have changed, it hasn't been cut down as it shows here. But that was their way of one, connecting north-south, connecting east-west. So they went around the building here. You could also walk through here, which seems like you probably then came out at this side and then continued walking around it. And then, of course, they had the parking that was below. And when you calculate the amount of piers that they had, they were under the 15% coverage at that property. And the other piece of the covenant, which was that at least 50% of the property had to be covered by parking, at least 50%. They were accomplishing that as well because they had the parking at the grade. So it's interesting, essentially, if you look at, this is, again, just a massing study, sort of, we try to take it from the same shot. We have our 3 stories here. This is the 2 stories of residential. This is the office section. What we're not doing that they did, we're not proposing to do, is cut the grade down or keep the grade low to expose the parking, but instead we're still approaching it the same way, putting parking below the building. But our intent is to enclose it. So it'll be an enclosed parking garage versus this, as long as it's 50% open, it's considered an open parking garage. So that's really the variation there. But the intent, after we looked at this, is basically the same. The other piece is we would not need to do the connection where we have a bridge over because we would be right at grade. So this is where you'd walk between the proposed buildings and go from that direction. So that was our way of trying to address the spirit of the covenants and understanding what was done in the past, trying to make the connections, separate from all the other design changes I think we've known over the years, building height and other pieces. So before I go in any further, does any questions with that or?
Wasn't there also some discussion in the covenants about parking for this project is supposed to integrate with the municipal parking?
I don't recall that. There was in the 1988 covenant for that rectangular strip, a requirement that the village's parking.
Yeah, I'm
had
not
to be
talking about
maintained
Vanderlyn
at
Ave.
that, yeah.
I'm talking about the covenant related to the 9/10 of an acre parcel. Where, you're bringing up how it's that curious thing about the 15% and then the remaining 50% has to be parking, but I believe, but I believe there's also another aspect where it then is supposed to integrate with the contiguous municipal lot. So I feel like that's not.
I didn't see
happening with
that
this project.
in the language, and I didn't see it in there.
I could go upstairs and get my notes.
So they obviously did not do that. Unless there was plans to purchase, to drive around of some sort.
Do you guys have any questions?
No.
I mean, I guess what I think is curious about the way you're approaching this is this project was not constructed in the 1960s.
Right.
Right, so what exactly derailed that project was, because I think what's curious is that like you're trying to replicate a project that was not
Not at all.
Well,
built.
but you're trying to use their way of dealing with the restrictions and covenants. This is what you're just pointing out to us.
No, so here's
Yes, I would, this is a legal issue, and this is what I said. Those covenants, when you look at a covenant, you have to say, what is the intent of the covenant? The intent of those covenants were to allow this project. So that's what the board, when we adopted those covenants and placed them, they didn't place it on there to say, we want a park or we want an open space. They placed it on to say, this is the development you're proposing. We're willing to give you the property and sell you the property for this development, subject to these restrictions based upon that development. So
That's your legal
And-
opinion, right?
no, well,
Yeah.
yeah, it is, but that's the evidence right there is there's the plan that was there that complies with the development when that board adopted it. And once again, I didn't want this to be, a legal argument, but as Jason pointed out, that parcel was subdivided, was changed. So part of those restricted parcel of 0.92 acres is on another land, and I would like to understand if the village has enforced those covenants against that other property. So there are a lot of, but we're not really, we were asked to analyze this. We believe this development, which was similar to propose, which provides you the aspects, provides the residential you asked for, provides office for a software company that is a village resident that wishes to expand and provide jobs on this property, that all of that taken into account, as Jason is going to show through the massing, will be an excellent use of this pit that will provide jobs, will provide tax ratables, will provide housing opportunities for employees and professors at SUNY New Paltz, while providing the requisite number of affordable units within those 32 that's required. So, we really want you to focus on those aspects of
Yeah,
this
but that's not our
project.
role.
That's not our job.
That's the
That's the
planning
planning
board,
board.
right? So
Well,
our role is to review these covenants and to understand why they were adopted historically. So I think a missing part of this conversation is, like, are there board minutes from the 1960s that discuss how they arrived at these covenants? Because I'm not 100% certain that they were written only to achieve that, that Lores of New Paltz building. I have not seen minutes that suggest that is the
So
case.
we have a history of the village transferring that parcel to the developer of the Lores project and actually filing the deed that had the restrictions that went to that developer. I mean, I think that's pretty strong evidence that it was intended to allow that developer to provide with that, subject to those restrictions. And,
The restrictions in terms of the lot coverage and the 15% and then the remaining portion that has to be parking up to, it's not clear.
well, once again, you can talk to, if it's not clear, the village drafted it. Therefore, the law is that it's interpreted against the person who's drafting it. So, I mean, all the evidence we're providing shows that.
No, my point is that it's not, what I'm saying is that I could read it one way and you could read it another way.
So you look to the intent into the evidence that you have, and the evidence that you have shows that the village at that time that they adopted it and drafted it was looking at this project and gave the property to the developer who did that project.
Right.
And who was going for that project
And our
with those restrictions.
Our
So,
attorney, who we've had conversations about these covenants, feels similarly in that it is not clear. And for the project that the Lalo Group has proposed, that is why our building department has said, we need a third-party assistance to review our zoning to see whether it makes sense. And in addition, it would make sense to have a third-party consultant review these covenants so that would help us understand the spirit of those covenants. And because I respectfully disagree with you that it's so clear that the covenants were written to build the Lores of New Paltz building, and that's it. I don't, that's not what
well,
is suggested to me when I read the covenants.
yes, you certainly have the right to consult your attorney, and I'm not saying it, and I respect it, but once again, number one, hiring a planner to provide a legal interpretation and.
No, the planner would be hired to help us interpret our zoning and to see whether the proposed project, which is what?
Which is also a law, and I don't understand why it, and I'd like to get into it, but we provided a development that had more office and more retail. And we got a letter from the building inspector after consulting with the attorney based upon the code that still exists in that form that said that was compliant. We were asked to examine and provide, and that's part of what we also wanted to provide, because we were asked in meetings to look and provide more housing, which is also as important a component of this redesign. So that is to show the housing and show the comments that we received, how we've addressed them. And I would like Jason to be able to go through that, because regardless of what we may be going back and forth and what you believe and we believe, and ultimately someone will decide as to what the covenants were there, you have the ability as the village board, not as the planning board, to say, we're going to, we believe that this project benefits the village, and it's clear there.
And that's why we need to wrap our heads around why the covenants were written in the 1960s, how they should be interpreted now. I mean, what I'm also struggling with is that this project has been discussed for many years at this point, and it was only once we brought up the fact that the covenants existed that ever became part of the conversation.
Because I wasn't aware that the covenants used, because I came in with the development plan that met your zoning code. And so that's where we're here. It's not hiding of anything, and there was no history and all the changes in the zoning and the addition of the parcel and the transfer of an additional parcel in 1988 and the review of an affordable housing project on that piece of land for months and months and months where it wasn't mentioned. So there's a good argument here, and that those covenants aren't even enforceable because the village over the course of the last, what's 1968 to now, 50 years has, not recognized those covenants, has not applied it to the land that was subdivided off the original parcel. But what I would those are all questions that are raised, and I'm not telling you you have to do anything tonight, but I would just like Jason to show you what the vision is of this project in 2023 and how it provides some really great benefits to the village and has addressed those concerns we've heard over the years about the real concerns of the design and the development that will allow you, as you review this, to say, as we talk to our consultants and as we talk to our attorney, is this something we want to accomplish?
Right, and I hope you'll appreciate that we take our fiduciary responsibility very seriously. And this project is a game changer for our downtown's character. The impacts on just a variety of things, which is all a planning board conversation. So,
which we're trying to get to. That's where
right. And to suggest that we should just be like, wow, it seems really good. There'll be some jobs created and some sales tax generated. Therefore, we can just ignore the history and the fact that these legal property restrictions exist. We have to understand them.
Well,
I really don't want to walk down the street and have, this thing be constructed, and it was constructed because we didn't take a hard look at these legal restrictions.
Well, we're providing you tonight our thought process and our position and our review as how we took a looked at it and presenting, and that's why I want to get Jason back to the, to the massing study to show you some of it, what it will look like. We provided that letter back to you in December. We're willing to meet. We're willing to talk. If you retain Behan, we're willing to sit and meet with them and go through this. We want to work this out and we want you to be comfortable with it. I'm not here telling you, damn it, this is absolutely correct. I'm telling you, you asked us to look at it. This is our position. This is what we're providing. This is why we did it, why we designed it this way, how we've attempted to meet the concerns of the public, and how we believe it will be a game changer, and it will be a positive game changer to take a pit that has had, you asked why the project back in 1968 get developed. There's a history of projects in that pit that have not been developed. And this is an opportunity, we think, with a great concept. And I'm going to turn it back to Jason, hopefully, just to, to show you the rest of the design and massing study, to show you what it'll look like from above.
How certain are you that those covenants did not exist before that proposed project of the Lures of New Paltz?
Because the covenants are dated 1962, and that those plans were dated.
Those participants from 1968.
Yeah.
So those covenants are not
For that.
only
were
for that project.
That parcel where that project was transferred by the village to that developer when that project was there.
Right.
If
Those
Right, but
covenants,
they
those
did that
covenants were
within
not,
the
written-
project.
those covenants were not written for that project, as you're
No.
suggesting.
They're not.
Well,
There were 6 years in between.
There was a totally different project there, and people in our community know the history, and there was supposed to be a post office constructed in the pit in the early 60s.
in the early 60s, was it to the person who the village said, we're writing a deed in I think the deed was in 1972. But, can Jason present the plans, and then you can look and you can talk through, there's tons of history. Why did the village, who allowed those two pieces to get subdivided? Where are they now? And did you enforce the restrictions on those pieces? Is that developed? Is it, what's on that? Is that person have to provide parking? Does that person have, have
That's
to
a great
go through-
question,
yeah,
and
so,
that's why,
well,
that's why
I'm not telling you,
we're-
give me the answer.
we're not,
tonight.
we are not going to take a project at face value and say, this is great, it's economic development.
We're presenting our position to you. And that's what I'm
Let him
asking
go.
Jason to do.
Let him
you know,
finish so we can move on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. To answer your question in a non-legal way, though, why does it look similar? We designed this a year ago based on conversations previously, before I even knew about the companies. And then we backed in, how are we accomplishing it? Some we are, some we're doing entirely differently. The 15%, we're not doing that. But this redesign was purely based to come back before the village to show that we saw the building heights, we lowered the building heights, separated it so we were smaller masses instead of one mass. And that's what led us to where we are from a design standpoint, not from a legal standpoint or any other piece, from a design standpoint. So I'll go real quick. So I want to move on. So as we were discussing, here's that walkway that's shown between the buildings. This is the hotel banquet center. This is the private drive that essentially connects Plattekill to Hasbrook. This is where I was referring to that the buildings step down. We thought it was best to try to reduce the masses to match what's in the community. So that's what, if you take a look at these buildings, which I'll show in a little bit, it's really what we tried to do. And even though this is one structure, because we have a center lobby that goes to the restaurant on one side, the hotel on the other, we were looking to try to create the massing so that it wasn't appearance like it was one large building. So I'll give you a quick then overview of that. That is basically what you see here. So this is our hotel. This is the banquet restaurant area. What's in purple is the connector, and then these are the residential units as you get closer to Elton. And When it comes to access, we have access under the hotel at this location. And then the main parking lot is as we've always had it, comes off of Hasbrook and then enters, and that takes you into the main underground parking area. I don't know how it was done previously, but that's sort of the approach that we took at this point. Quick look from an aerial perspective. So this shows basically the two sides. Here's Elting, Hasbrook, Elting back here. Again, this is where we're sitting. The image is from Google, so it's a bit flattened and distorted as ours sits. This building is 35 feet high from grade here. This one's about 28 feet. These buildings step down as the grade drops down, and so we have the same thing there. This is the hotel section. This is the banquet area and restaurant. And then here you've got the residential in these two buildings. But along the access path that connects them is where you've got a little bit of retail is what we're proposing there. And so here you can see this is basically the walkway that connects from Hasbrook. The park is down there, connects between them, and you can sort of see how we step down with the property. Right, so the hotel sits up, then we step down, and then we step down again as we get to Elting. So we really have 3 levels at grade, just depends on where we are on the street to connect through. So we found the same grade here as at the parking lot so that we connect through. And of course, this is the paper street that exists now. So that's really the concept overview to try to create this interior courtyard area and still comply with pieces of zoning, planning, and try to limit the height of the buildings as well from what we had previously, which was 6 stories, I believe. And that's
What
the,
did you say about number of stories?
I think like back in 2011, it was 6 stories, wasn't it? I don't even remember.
6 stories.
Way back, 2011.
Oh, an earlier
Oh, like-
proposal
Yeah, back 10 years ago.
for this project.
Yeah,
To the prior rendition.
that's where we started.
Yeah.
And then-
2011?
Yeah, we started, and then 14 we presented.
Yeah.
And then we had the charrettes, we talked about it, and then came back with a different plan. And then the complaint, some complaints were that we weren't connecting between the two. So that's when we came back with this to make the connection. And that's,
Any idea how many gallons per day of sewer this entire project would use?
The exact number, I think it's around 2,000 gallons, maybe 20,000. If you quote me on that's just an estimate.
And that's hotel, offices, retail, residential,
Residential.
event space, all of the above.
Yeah, it would be all those, that might be a little low, I don't have the exact number, but. I can put that together and get that.
Please,
Even just a rough idea.
yeah,
and so
we
by,
don't have a lot of space left for capacity, so we need to be very thoughtful about what we use.
so just by way of numbers, so you have it, it's 32 apartments. It's 54 hotel rooms and 8,000 square feet of office and 2,000 square feet of retail.
Here's the banquet room.
5,000.
5,000 square feet, I think.
Wait, so what about the restaurant? Is that separate from banquet?
Yeah, so we've got banquet for like weddings and things like that. It's part of the hotel, but then we've got the breakfast for the hotel and then, regular restaurants. So the thought, this is a 2-story building, so banquet on the first floor and then the restaurant.
It's 2 stories from
2 stories.
from the east, but what if you're on the west? How?
Well, so
much?
at this property, so then it'd be 3 stories.
3 stories on the other side. But then with two levels below grade.
In Well, no, that one level below grade is at that third story, right? Because that's open now on that side. It'd be the basement on this side, but it's open there. So it's just 2 levels. Yeah, basically it's stepping down. So below this building, you've got 2 levels of parking. Below this, you've got a basement for back of house cleaning and laundry, things like that. And then this is, actually, it's this color, that's the parking. So we've got parking here under. This is the base that sits under it all. And that's the overall parking structure. And then here you see sort of the same thing, right? So here's the 3 levels, 2 of residential. This little bit of red is that 1,900 square feet of retail. The rest of it's the office, which is the dark purple, and that sits over that 1 level of parking that connects all the way through.
But the parking won't be visible from the street.
No,
It's gonna be closed.
Yeah. And even all loading. So we've got a spot in here.
Mhm.
It's actually under this where 2 tractor trailers could easily on there, some things on the exterior.
And there's no connection to the parking to the north at all.
You know, you walk, it's just walking that way. Yeah, because actually we're, even like in the other, we're below it by that 1 story. You'd have to be at this walkway, right, at grade here. You'd have to have your parking at that level.
Is there a pool in the hotel?
Yeah, so we notched it out.
Saw it in
So
that other picture,
yeah,
that
so
blue
that-
was there.
this one, right?
Yeah.
So we notched in the hotel to put the pool.
It's an outdoor pool?
Yep.
Interesting. All right. Thank you for showing us.
So, I'm really interested in the history of why this particular property was never developed at this time. My feeling is that the scale of it isn't the scale that village people, persons wanted to see, so there might be quite a bit of pushback. I'm getting the same impression as this project. Are these these are just sketches at this point in terms of the aesthetics, the elevations? Because to me, my first reaction is I might see this off the New York State rather than New Jersey Turnpike.
Mhm,
It doesn't have that feel, that village feel.
mhm.
It's massive. It's going to change the character of the village. And I think you need to have that consideration in presenting future drawings and plans. The banquet hall is 5,000 square feet. We have a housing crisis in our community. I don't really see the banquet hall being a great use of space myself, and so many people are homeless and fighting to live in the community. The other thing, no. The roof system, any plans for PVs across the top?
Absolutely.
Charging stations on the ground, that kind of thing. You know, it just seems out of scale for a village, a city, large town, village. I don't see something to scale working myself. Usually, yeah. Of course, that can be changed with this purpose and expansion of housing.
Thank you.
Any other questions from trustees?
Not at the moment.
I think you guys asked them.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
A long meeting already.
I'll forward it to you.
Thank you.
So, you know, we shared with you the memos that we received from our building department and being, you know, and then we reached out to be in planning to get a proposal and also from our attorney to get a proposal. You know, we have a draft resolution that would involve need for an escrow of $12,500 for the village to engage consultants to, understand, per Corey's memo, whether he's interpreting the zoning correctly, whether this project works with our zoning. And then also use a third party to understand get an opinion regarding the covenants and whether the covenants work with the proposed project as well. So that's where we're at, we feel we have a responsibility to really understand these covenants before we can move forward. And to your point, there is, if there's a project where there's a quid pro quo where this is going to offset, the restrictions, then the village board goes ahead and makes those changes.
Certainly we're, speak for, fine, we'll meet with your consultants. I mean, we have met with the community and we made several revisions to this. And, the only thing I would add is we know what people don't seem to like, but we haven't gotten any commitment to say, and I'm personally a little bit frustrated because one of those projects that was out for scale is a pure affordable housing project. And I sat in the room and heard the priest from St. Joseph's at that point come up and tell me that it would take parking spaces away from his parishioners, and they didn't like to walk, the people who donated the most. So when we talk about affordable housing, I sat there, it was a pure affordable housing. The then mayor supported it, but the other board members, it's out of scale, it's out of this, we have to study. So, part of this is a pit, and 54-room hotel is not a huge hotel. You asked us to provide housing. We do have 32, units of housing. You don't have a lot of vacant land to meet your needs. We'll listen, we'll work, we'll meet, but we need to come to some type of understanding soon, because we've come up with a lot of iterations, and it's easy to say, yeah, that's not perfect, but we need some input then,
I think our community
Yeah,
reacts positively to a lot of things. We had a very long discussion on that zero, this is being proposed in a couple of years of review. We made some great comments and helped steer that project in ways that from day one to its completion. So, you're getting feedback here.
Right.
Well, you have to pay attention to.
We've met,
Yes.
we've met with, and we've changed it several times based upon that community input. So I don't, want to, so that we haven't listened. We reached out, we had, several meetings.
A couple things, or go ahead.
Oh, I just want to, on the housing thing is as of January 1st, as of also right now, this upcoming month, what housing needs are both on the county level and state level, and that we're going to have to follow here in the village, that totally has changed. That whole discussion has totally changed. So, and I know that, we all know that, but under New York state law, we have to start increasing how much housing of all kinds is being built, and any projects have to be, housing related. That didn't exist, 2 months ago. There is a resolution being considered on the county level right now that has considerable support. I think it's going to pass in a couple of weeks, establishing housing as a county priority and making it part of, I don't think the same word or benefits, but basically makes it required that housing is basically addressed and an issue at all times. So I don't know, the conversation has just changed a whole lot than previously. And then the other thing I wanted to say is just also speaking with, my cohort in the village, you know, the past 20 years or so about things you want to see and whatnot. Whenever, you know, jobs come up, especially service industry jobs, you know, that's our big industry, right? Where will these people live? Mohunk has been around forever, and the hiring director at Mohunk can't hire people because they can't afford to live within a 30-minute radius of Mohunk. And that issue, you know, plagues our main street as well. So, you know, also thinking about that is I think very important to the community. Once all the other issues are addressed, like the covenants and water and sewer capacity.
I certainly agree. I've done presentations. I've been on committees. From your lips to God's ear, if the governor's proposals go through, it's been the only bipartisan agreement in the state was to scuttle her last proposal last year, which was excellent. She has courage. I hope it goes through. I will bring developers to the village who can provide the type of affordable, you know, in housing you need. It's a region-wide problem. You know, I agree with you, but you also need, you know, this project will not only provide service jobs, it will provide tech jobs through SAM 6, which is a big need. It will provide ratables that the village can use to go provide housing. So it's always a balancing. So, you know, we will listen, and, you know, we originally had 64, 88 apartments in the first design. That was out of scale. It was too high. We took the apartments away because the zoning didn't really provide, and we provided, you know, additional. Then we were told to put some back in. So now we're back up to, you know, to 32. So those issues, we're willing to discuss, you know.
I feel like we have seen versions of this plan since 2015, and I have all of them. I have the file in my office. I would say they're all pretty similar, but what I struggle with is the fact that we never were discussing the fact that the village had a right to these covenants until we brought it to your attention. And you're feeling frustrated that this has taken some time, but this is kind of like a conversation that could have happened 8 years ago, but it did not. So now we're forced to try to wrap our heads around, you know, how significant those covenants are and what a project should look like, mindful of those covenants.
And you certainly, like I said, have the right to do it, but I would just reiterate those covenants fit on a very small portion of this project. So what would this project look like if it met with your vision of the covenants? It wouldn't be, it would provide is that what you want, for 0.4 acres of an asphalt parking lot there and a strip mall in a
Like I
few
said before,
housing
there's
units? That's what your covenants.
It's not cut and dry in terms of how the covenants could be interpreted.
And it's on one piece of this parcel. So, you know, and the last thing I would say is part of the reason you have scale here is, given the fact that this is a pit, it is difficult to develop, and you need some scale to provide underground parking, to provide, you know, what you need to do. You need to get some income out of it to, you know, to build that. So it's, you know, we're not saying it's not a difficult project, and we're here to talk and see if we can come to something.
But also to provide some context too, the affordable housing project that you're talking about that was considered is from when Tom Nyquist was mayor,
No,
right?
Jason was.
Jason was
And he
mayor.
supported it, to his credit, because he said, I ran on affordable housing and we need affordable housing, and the other board members.
And that's when the Catholic Church was concerned
Yes.
about their burden.
I'll never forget
parishioners
that.
using it.
It's one of those.
Yeah, forget it. Let's just.
But there have been several projects
That was one that was Conifer, was a group.
that have been considered for this area. So we have this resolution. If you're suggesting that you're comfortable with our need for this escrow, then we'll go ahead and move that resolution. If that's,
We provide the escrow. We would like an accounting, like, of, what's billed against that. And,
okay. Anything else from our board? Okay, thanks.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gonna move that we adopt the resolution for the escrow.
Second. Oh, third.
All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
I'm also calling the question regarding the
Yes, he was just calling.
that's what I'm doing right now.
But, right, but
Yes.
somebody had a question which could have been answered, well, Anton was here, but if you want to take a minute to address it.
Sure, what's the question?
Question is from Max, actually, that came over via YouTube, and he asked, why can't we get other bids like Verizon if this equipment is so old, they're going to pass upgrades on to the consumer? So just a question about bringing other cable service providers into the village.
Anyone is welcome to. Our franchise agreement is not exclusive. All in favor of sending the draft franchise agreement to Spectrum? Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Got it out.
We never, Autumn, we never opened the public hearing at this, today is the first time. So I'm gonna motion, now that we have a full form in person, I'm gonna motion that we open the public hearing.
Second. Resounding second.
Have we received any comments regarding that law change? No?
No.
I'm gonna motion that we close the public hearing. All in favor?
Hi.
And then getting back to the business portion of the agenda, I'd like to move that we adopt this change to our zoning code.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is a draft resolution. Bill, you want to describe this?
Yeah, this is a resolution sent to our governor to increase funding for farm to school programs and grant programs. The resolution is asking Kathy Hochul to support $10 million for the farm to school incentive and $3 million for the farm to school grants for fiscal year 24. The current funding at this time is about half of those numbers. And given that we are a community deep in the agricultural basket of New York State, and we have schools in need, populations in need, this is a vote of support. This resolution comes from a petition circulated by the American Farmland Trust, and I went over it with our new school superintendent. And he's going to see if the school board will also draft their own resolution and pass that and send that off to our elected officials across the state. I think it's been a sort of a pet cause of mine for many years that see all this food happening in our county, in our communities.
What are people in Albany saying in terms of the likelihood that it will actually get included in the budget?
I know that. There's hope.
Well,
I know it's also an issue our current senator is very passionate and vocal about as ag chair. So that gives me hope too.
Mhm. And I love this. I'm so grateful that you brought it up.
It's terrific, and hopefully that more money will flow into those two programs.
I'd
Someone want
like
a second?
even more than that, but I'll take it.
Does someone want a second?
I will second that wholeheartedly.
All in favor?
Aye. Thanks, Bill, for
Yes.
bringing
Thank you,
this
Bill.
forward.
So the next item is, we have a proposal from NIPA. This is for their offering where we can buy generation from them. And we've been doing this for the last year at a rate of almost 9 cents per kilowatt hour. So we have 13 different accounts, a bunch of sewer pump stations, water plant, a sewer plant, this building, total of 13 altogether. So their proposal included the opportunity to lock in a fixed rate for 1, 2, or 3 years, and then also whether we wanted to do a standard market rate or their at least 51% green or their 100% green. Currently, we're in their 100% green. My proposal is that we do the full 3 years at 10 cents and 100% green.
I noticed at one point when I was looking through it, I believe that of the 1, 2, or 3, like 2 years was less expensive than 3. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but you're foreseeing that you think it'll continue to go up, so it's worth it to do that, or?
Yeah, it's the same reason why the other last meeting, we were going to do a 3-year 2% annual escalation with our sewer plant operator. And Bill was like, see if they'll agree to 5. And they agreed to 5.
Right, but my
You know,
point
all-
being the 2 was lower, a lot lower than 3.
It's lower by a fraction of a penny.
Okay,
Um,
I'm thinking of the other one that wasn't maybe, the.
But
alternative.
I think locking anything in this inflationary environment is a reasonably
Yeah.
prudent bet.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm most comfortable with is 100% green and the longest locked in.
And I'm also very interested in exploring whether we could use this NIPA program as the energy supply company for our CCA.
Yeah.
I brought that up
Mhm.
on a call this
Yeah.
afternoon.
Right.
Because I think the advantage that we might have, because it's not they call it their blended power program, and they've not marketed it besides having marketed it to like a handful of municipalities and some non-for-profits like hospitals, but it's like a very small number are actually participating in this NIPA program.
Do you want to?
And this is not NIPA's like regular hydro assets. This is actually NIPA buying wind and solar recs within New York
Right.
State. It's
So-
a true ESCO alternative.
NIPA is the New York Power Authority for anyone here who might not know. And do you want to, what was the other, the CCA? Do you want to explain to them what a CCA is real quick?
Thank you.
Community choice aggregation is for all intents and purposes functions like a buying club. So when we act as a large entity, we can hopefully have more bargaining influence. And New York State created a law a few years ago that allows us to form CCAs so that we can then approach energy supply companies and say, look, we're a bunch of buyers, give us a good rate because we have a ton of customers who will pay that rate. So we've been able to purchase, well, we don't purchase the generation, we have it so that our customers buy the generation directly, because the alternative is that you buy generation that's provided by Central Hudson. So this allows us to lock in rates or commit to something like a 100% green sourced generation.
Thank you. figured that there's-
Okay, so did we move NIPA 3 years at 100% green?
Not yet,
move it.
but
Call the question. Did someone second my motion?
Second.
All in favor?
I,
You're looking at me, I'll second it. Perfect.
And then the next item is,
Did we do the consent agenda? I can't.
yeah, we did.
I couldn't remember if we did it before they came.
Yeah, yeah. So the next item, so last year in July, we applied for some grant assistance to repair some sewer mains on South Chestnut, Prospect Street, and Harrington. And then we got an award in November of 2022. So this is basically that project, just authorizing the mayor to sign the agreement for the project.
Second. Oh, sorry.
Good. All in favor?
Aye.
And this is the total project cost is $914,450. And then we, as a village sewer fund, are committing $47,000. So, when you have a local match, that will often make the grantors more comfortable with your level of seriousness and commitment. So that's why we included it in our grant proposal. And then the next item, did I call a question? No. All in favor of me signing that
We
authorization?
did, and we said
Aye.
aye.
We did.
All right, aye now.
I move that we officially support the Margaret Wade Lewis Center application for the Preserve New York grant.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move that we hire Devon Pritchard as a part-time temp account clerk at the rate of $21 an hour effective Feb 27.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move we adopt the resolution for bills and claims.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Planning board update, they met last night.
They did, and I had another meeting with the fire department, so I was unable to attend.
Okay.
My apologies.
And has the ZBA met? Is there an update?
I was working and was unable to attend, but I'm getting some stuff from Autumn.
Okay, so we're gonna have updates
Okay, so
about planning board and ZBA activity on March 8th.
I can share it. 137 North Chestnut redesigned their plan to include parapets. And the ZBA can't approve until the seeker is completed, but they're more inclined to approve it. Thank you, Autumn.
The parapet.
When they do this thing,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
yep.
What was the address again?
137 North
137
Chestnut.
North Chestnut.
So that's the trail link, the former Gateway building.
Okay. Right, okay.
Oh,
Anything else from the village board?
yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Aye.
Aye, aye, aye.